Hey everybody, you know, I always get asked how I make my Christmas bows, and I have other people ask me if I'll make bows for them, and I'm happy to. So I know you've probably seen a ton of tutorials for people that make bows. I'm going to show you a detailed tutorial, and we're going to make a bow using multiple ribbons. I have this gorgeous tartan plaid and this gorgeous green and red with some gold embroidery on it. Both of these came from Michael's this year, 2022, and they were a great price. They're 65% off if you want to go grab some. I've never seen Michael's have such good ribbon. And then the other ribbon I'm going to throw in is going to be a little bit of surprise, probably to you. It's a navy and kind of off-white stripe. This, I think, came from Hobby Lobby. They kind of carry it year-round. So I think it will be pretty as an accent pop to this. This blue, this plaid has got blue in it. Plus, I've got blue and white in my home. So I'm going to throw it in at the end. What I'm doing is, and this makes a difference, you want to consider how large your wreath is that you're going to be making a bow for, or your Christmas tree, or whatever you're going to be applying your bow to. Now in my case, I'm making a wreath for my front door, and I've got just a plain old fake wreath, and it measures somewhere between 26 and 30 inches wide. So it's a big wreath. My house sits back from the street, so I like a wreath that makes a statement that you can see from the wreath. So because of the size of the wreath, I'm going to make a large bow that reflects that. Now I've already wrapped some ribbon around my wreath, and this is what I'm going to be using to hang it from. And the way I hang my wreath is I apply a command hook upside down to the inside of my front door. And I'll tie this in a knot, and I will run the ribbon up the front door, over the top of the door, back around, and hook it into that command strip. All right, that's enough about that. Let's talk about making a bow. The other thing you want to decide is how long you want your tails to be. And in my case, I want my tails to be pretty long. And then I can cut them off to length afterwards. I want them to be probably at least as long as my wreath is to start with. So, to make a bow using multiple ribbons, you can make them two ways. You could make a separate bow out of each ribbon and then stack one bow on top of the other. My preferred way of doing that, which I think is prettier, is to mingle them together. So I layer the two ribbons, one on top of the other, as you can see here. And I start with the amount, this is my tail. This is going to be my tail. And I've got my thumb up here where I want to actually start my loops. Okay, so I'm kind of going to eyeball it. You can measure if you want to, but I'm just kind of eyeball it. So first of all, I'm going to make my first loop like this. All right. I'm going to hold it here. Now I'm going to lay this over on my wreath to see if I think this size will be appropriate when it's doubled. Remember, you're going to have loops on both sides. If this is going to be appropriate. Now you will lose some length in your loops as you twist the ribbon as you're making it, and then once you fluff the bow when you're done with it. So take that into consideration. I've made them too short before and they don't look good. So anyway, this is my first loop. You can see all I did was just fold the ribbon over. Now, at this point, I'm ready to make my loop down here. I'm going to take my ribbon and literally, where my finger, I'm going to hold it. Well, you know what? I've already got my ribbon has slid a little bit. All right. Okay, I'm going to hold my ribbon on the back side, and I'm going to grab both pieces of ribbon and literally twist it completely around, just like that, and hold that in place. And then I'm going to make another loop from this direction, okay? And I want this loop and this loop to be about the same, you know, as close to the same size as I can get it. Let's add a little bit more to this end. Kind of looking at it here now. I could fold it back like this if you want to kind of double check yourself. You know, I can tell This one's still a little bit short. So I'm gonna lengthen it a little bit more. Now they are about the same length. And yes, this gets awkward. I'll go ahead and tell you that up front. It gets a little bit awkward trying to hold all these layers together. So make sure your fingers are good and limbered up. All right, let me double check this again. I've been talking before we move on. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the ribbon. I'm going to twist it completely around, not just part way, but all the way. I'm going to turn it all the way over. Now, I'm just going to keep continuing this same process because, look, I've got to start over. I have this ribbon the wrong way. But anyway, I'm going to continue the same process. I'll show you in fast motion until I have the number of loops that I want. All right, I'm ready to make my final loop. I've got 3 on each end. I'm going to make a 4th one on this end. Now, when all these layers are pulled apart, I'll have a total of, how many loops will I have? 7 and 14 loops? Does that sound right? Anyway, I'm not good at math. All right, so here's my last loop. I'll have 4, and on the last loop, I am going to twist it around again. Couple reasons why you do this. Twisting your ribbon makes the bow easier to fluff out when you're done than if they're all just straight in there. You can fluff it and pull it different directions a little bit easier. Also, when you're working with 2 ribbons, when you twist it, you can make sure that the ribbon you want on top remains on top. All right, the next step is that I'm going to take some floral wire. I'm going to have to pause here and cut a piece, and we're going to tie it, cinch it really tightly around this bow, around all this ribbon. All right, I've got my piece of long floral wire. This can be a little bit awkward too, so you might need to lay your ribbon down, but that's okay. Don't worry about mashing it, because if it's wired edge ribbon, I should have said this, wired edge ribbon is the best, I think, for making wreath bows or tree bows. So anyway, I got my long piece of floral wire. There's the front. This is where I started. I'm just going to lay it down like this to hold it all in place. And I cut myself a very long piece of wire. I want to make sure I've got more wire than I need. I've got a lot of layers of ribbon to loop together or to cinch together here, and I want to make sure that I've got plenty of wire to attach it to my wreath. And I gotta make enough. I want to make sure I got enough ribbon, wire, that I can grab it with my hands, because I am cinching this as tightly as I can, and then I'm twisting it. Okay, and I'm going to continue to twist it several times to hold it in place. It's a little bit hard to pull all these layers of ribbon tightly together. I don't think that's tight enough. I'm gonna undo it and cinch it some more. Like I said, this is a detailed video. I don't want you to think necessarily, sometimes you can get frustrated if you grab something to do it and it doesn't go right the first time. I can get frustrated and just want to throw the whole thing away. You got to be in the right frame of mind to do things like this, at least I do. So I want to show you the good, the bad, the real, and the awkward. All right, and I hope I'm not boring you by doing that. All right, so let's try it again. Got it laid down here. Trying to press it down with my hands to kind of hold it into that cinched position. I'm going to squeeze it with my fingers. I'm going to cinch it and wrap my wire, and I'm going to cinch it again, almost like reeling a big fish. You reel it in a little bit, you release, you reel it in some more, kind of like that. All right, let's see if that's looking good. Let's see, there's about 3 or 4 twists. Yeah, I think that's better than it was. All right, I'm going to twist this just a few more times just to be on the safe side. Okay, I think that's good. Now, look like an ugly blob, doesn't it? What I'm going to do now, this is when the magic happens. All right, I'm going to take my loops and I'm going to pull them apart opposite one another like that. Okay. The next loop down, instead of pulling the plaid over this way like this one, I'm going to pull it the opposite way. Like that. Okay, I'm going to keep going until I have these done. Okay, here it is with all the layers pulled apart. Still doesn't look all that great, does it? But I'm going to continue to fluff it. Now, I've got my streamers, I've got my tails here. I want to adjust them. Kind of pull them down where I'm going to want them to be. So I'm to the point now that I probably want to go ahead and attach this to the wreath and continue to fluff it from there. Now, I haven't forgotten that I wanted to add this piece of accent ribbon. Okay, here's the bow attached to the wreath. Still doesn't look great. I'll have to give it its final fluffing once I put it up on the door. All I did to attach it to the wreath was wire it to the wreath frame, and I changed my mind. Remember, I said that I had this length of ribbon wound around here first. I decided to take that off, then attach my bow. And what I'll do when I get ready to hang the wreath, I'll take this length of ribbon that I had cut, and I will put it over the top of the bow. It'll kind of hide that cinching in case I want to do that. It doesn't really show, but anyway, it'll go over where it's cinched, and I'll hang it, still hang it using the same method. Now I want to add my accent ribbon before I hang it on the door. I have my wreath lying flat to add the accent ribbon. Now, I could have incorporated the accent ribbon into the big bow, but I don't want it to be that much. I don't want there to be that much of it. I just want it as an accent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a few lengths of this, and I'll probably make a loop with it, just pull a loop like that and kind of tuck it up in there. And I'll do it with a piece of wire. I'll wrap it around what's already there. I'll probably put one there, maybe one up top, and maybe a third one somewhere. And to create a loop of this ribbon, all I got to do is just, fold it, give myself a loop. Might do 2 loops because of the size of this other ribbon. So I'll pull it up and do another loop. And I'll cinch that together with a piece of wire. Then I'll take the piece of wire, I'll place this where I want it to be in the bow, kind of pushed into the bow. Then I'll take a piece of wire and wrap it around the base of the bow to hold it in place. Okie doke. Let's make a double loop. All right, again, I'm gonna make my tails really long because I don't know exactly how long I want them to be. So I'm gonna create this starting with my tail. I'm making one rather long loop because remember how big my bow is. I'm going to pull some ribbon off the spool and make another loop that's the same size as this one. I want to check to make sure they're even. I can do that number. This one's a little bit long, so I'm going to pull it down a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to take my piece of floral wire and I'm going to twist it around the bottom of where the ribbon is looped. So I want to secure the loops in place before I attach them to the wreath. So all I'm doing is putting my floral wire on there, giving it a really tight twist to hold it in place. Okay, now where the experimentation starts a little bit. Again, this is another wired ribbon. Even though it's not wide, it is wired. So I think I'm just going to reach way up under here where the bow is, and I'm taking my floral wire and I'm wrapping it around the bow, the base of the bow itself, and I'm kind of pulling it in place. Now, does it look like when it's hanging, are my loops long enough that they're actually going to show? That's a consideration too for how long you make your loops. Let's look at it. I think that'll be pretty good. So I'm going to twist this together to hold it in place. Again, it's not fluffed, but you can see how I've just created a little accent of ribbon. Okay, and we can pull it around. think I'll make another one up here somewhere. Let me work on that. Okay, here the wreath is, hung on my front door. The bow is all fluffed out, looking pretty. You can see my piece of ribbon that I have it hanging from, how long I left the tails, and I did add a slant cut to the ends. Made this tail, you know, just a little bit shorter as an accent, but I think it turned out very pretty.